There are an estimated 8 million Gen Z voters who can take part in this year's presidential election for the very first time. And they have some power. The question is, will they use it? There was a great deal of apathy out there when it appeared the election would be a repeat of the 2020 contest, but things have changed since Kamala Harris became the Democratic nominee. So what are Gen Z voters thinking now? One man who ran against Joe Biden at the top of the ticket this year, the former presidential candidate Jason Palmer. In fact, he won one of the primary contests in American Samoa, is back with us. Since then, he's been working to get more young people signed up to the vote. Welcome back to the programme. We said at the top, this is the most consequential election in history. Good to see you too. We said it was one of the most consequential elections. Does that register with the young people that you talk to?
It does register with them. In fact, I was talking to a few voters just earlier today who it's their first time voting, and they know that this matters so much. Now, these are people who grew up, the last 8 years, Donald Trump has been one of the biggest parts of their whole universe. Even when he wasn't president, they saw him on TV all the time. They knew what he was all about. This is their first time to really say what they think about Donald Trump.
You seem to be a rare thing in politics, Jason. You've endorsed 18 purple candidates for Congress, so 8 Democrats, 8 Republicans, 2 independents. What metric do you use when you decide whether or not to support a candidate?
Yeah, so we had 5 main metrics that we used to support candidates. The first metric was, are they young? Are they somebody in their 20s or 30s? And the average age of our candidates is 38 years old. Second was, are they willing to put out statements or even advertisements that say there's extremes on the left, there's extremes on the right, and we actually are someone who want to be in the center. And they would even sign up to say that they want to join the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is a group in Washington as part of Congress. It's about 60 representatives strong right now that work across the aisle and try to build bipartisan solutions. Third, were they actually willing to stand up and say they would support the outcome of the elections, that they would support democracy? You would think that would be very easy, but many MAGA candidates wouldn't stand up for something like that. Our center candidates would. Finally, the fourth and fifth criteria are they running against a MAGA opponent? And so we chose a number of purple districts where there's somebody who's too radical when it's a Democrat running against a MAGA Republican, or where it's a Republican who scored very well on what's called the Lugar centrist score, which shows that they actually work across the aisle and build bipartisan connections.
We talked about the Senate races. You are independently wealthy. I know that you're supporting Dan Osborne in Nebraska, who is an independent running against a Republican incumbent, Deb Fischer. Why would you, a businessman, support a steam fitter, former union man from Nebraska?
Well, when I was on the campaign trail, and actually going way back, my father was a union member. He actually was a teacher, became a principal and a superintendent. I grew up in an education family, a union family. Now, I myself have never been part of a union, but I've always believed that America has kind of an incomplete story when it comes to unions. We actually need to invent a new set of policies. Unions 2.0 is what I call it, that actually upgrades unionism for modern times. Now, in Dan's case, I didn't actually decide to support him because of his union background, although it's really impressive what he was able to do as a union leader. It's because he is someone who wants to have real solutions, common sense solutions, and he is kind of a common sense person. I was lucky enough to meet him 3 times in person. The first time I was not so sure, who is this guy? What's he all about? But by the third time I was convinced, and that's why not only did I donate, but I recommended to all the people that I know that they get behind his candidacy as well. Officially, I have not endorsed him. This is a technicality now that I understand politics. It's just that I support him, and I'm telling people they should support him too.
Right. Mick Mulvaney, I'm going to make Jason blush. I would suggest that we need more people like Jason Palmer in politics. Practical, bipartisan, common sense solutions. Kamala Harris has suggested that were she elected, she might bring some Republicans into her cabinet. Would that be a good start?
No,
I think
not
that
really.
was
I mean, look, I don't disagree with the sentiment. I'm always encouraging of people who are well-meaning from the left and the right to get involved in public service and run for public office. Not trying to discourage that, but no, simply adding a token Republican to a Democrat cabinet or vice versa doesn't change the environment, the atmosphere in the United States right now. Washington's not broken, Christian. The country is. Washington reflects the country. It doesn't lead the country. People say, how do you fix Washington? I keep saying, how do you fix the country? You show me how to fix the country, I'll show you how to fix Washington. So the difficulty we face right now is that the sorts of candidates that you've just discussed tend to lose. The primary system in this country is set up to encourage a more extreme right-wing position in a primary or a more extreme left-wing position in a primary. And it's very difficult for centrist sort of candidates to win. It happens. I know a lot of them, some friends of mine in swing districts especially. But generally speaking, that's not a formula for political success in this country.
It does work in France. It seems to work in France. Jess, presidents have had bipartisan figures in their cabinet. I know it's not always easy. I'm just trying to imagine Liz Cheney maybe sitting next to some Democrats in a cabinet. Would that work?
Well, look, I would love to work with more Democrats. I think you saw this current administration, the Democratic administration under Joe Biden, try to work with Republicans on immigration here, and Republicans blocked that. And even though there were many Republicans who were supporting a bipartisan bill there. But I think, look, this is about this campaign in this moment. We have the election tomorrow coming up here. And the reality is that Donald Trump is closing his campaign, his third campaign now, his campaign in a dark and fearful way. Kamala Harris is running her campaign focused on the future. And I think she has said very clearly, as you stated, that she is open. She is trying to reach everyone, Republicans and independents. And she's getting a lot of them. You don't take my word for it. There are hundreds of prominent Republicans who have come out on record against Donald Trump and against Project 2025 and all of the things that have been happening. She's going to get some Republican votes. She's going to get people who she can bring into a cabinet if she wins this race. There's no question about it. Kamala Harris is going to go into the White House with a to-do list for sure, while Donald Trump is focused on his enemies list and himself and his own grievances. And that's the difference. That's the bottom line in this election right now.
Caroline, I think Mick's right, though, in one respect. It is the country that is broken. For those of us who love America and come here regularly, it is quite shocking to see how divided this country is. It's splitting families. It's breaking up friendships. What gives? I mean, what happens tomorrow or after tomorrow if the country remains as divided as it is?
I think you're right, Christian. I mean, if I had the solution, I think I'd be a very wealthy woman, and I don't know if I know Jason's very wealthy, but I don't know if I'd be on the show if I'm honest. But you know, being utterly serious, it's extremely divided in the country at the moment. The anxiety I feel is everywhere. People are, heightened. I think it is evinced by these 2 assassination attempts on one of the candidates that we saw this year. Nothing could be more serious than that. I think that the unfortunate legacy of this election cycle is going to be denialism. The denialism project, the project that sort of really the Stop the Steal project that former President Trump set in motion with his last loss back in 2020. That project really has a life of its own now. Whether or not Trump concedes, if he loses, let's say he loses and he concedes, there is still going to be a sizable number of people in this country who feel that the very system, the checks and balances, everything is rigged, and it's rotten to its core. And, when people feel disenfranchised like that, they turn sometimes to violence, as we saw on January 6th. So I think the unfortunate reality, Jess, I think, has done it sort of well to kind of point out the to-do lists that maybe either of the candidates may have when they get into office. But the unfortunate reality is that whoever wins, America, or a sizable chunk of America, is going to feel that they lost, and they're going to be taking that very personally. And at the moment, the way that these 2 candidates are being talked about and talk about one another, quite frankly, is that one or the other of them is either a fascist or an enemy. And, that kind of rhetoric that really is sort of seeped into our politics means that consensus building, any kind of coalition building, cross-party policy making, that is going to be extremely difficult in the future. And so I fear for the Gen Z voter, first-time voter, very excited about polls. This is the political country, the reality that they live in at the moment. That is something
but I think
trying to change.
But Jason, if you were to look at how the campaign has run, it's been the TikTok campaign. It's been social media where many of the clips have been aired, where many of the candidates have gone. And I sort of wonder, and we've talked about it internally here, I mean, what the role of the mainstream media is in this, because it used to be to educate, to inform, to guide, but there's so much suspicion of the media now that is not a role they play anymore. In fact, people go to the mainstream media, they go into their own bubble or to be reconfirmed in what they think. They go to Fox News or they might go to one of the left-leaning liberal channels here in America. Is that a problem?
I think it's just a natural evolution, to be honest with you. When Donald Trump won in 2016, it was because of his expertise in Twitter. Now, the people that are going to win this time around, and I think it's going to be a lot of the young candidates that I'm supporting right now, or that Together is supporting, it's because they are masters of YouTube and TikTok. And I have to mention something here that a couple of the panelists have said, Jason's very wealthy or something like that. That's not actually true. I actually have used so much of my savings that I am now in debt trying to get everybody elected. This is not something where Jason is a billionaire. This is something where I did make a lot of money as an entrepreneur and as an investor over the last 15 years, but I've spent all of that money in order to try to change the outcome of this election. And, I'm not going to say I'm poor. I still have myself. I still have all my talents. I'm going to figure out what to do next. But, in a way, I've put everything I can on the line for this election. And it is a TikTok election. It is a YouTube election. But I want to tell all of you, I actually run the YouTube ads for our organization. We're just 8 people and 3 of us are volunteers. So,
Jason?
And I don't want to say it's just about me either. There were 400,000 people knocking on doors this past weekend all over the country.
Jason?
Yes.
We're up against it. We're up against the break, Jason. Thank you very much for coming on tonight. My thanks to Mick, to Caroline and to Jess as well. Thank you very much indeed. We'll be right back after this break.